Kia ora, good morning. Is it good morning? Oh, good afternoon. Sorry, yeah, so you're just going to have to bear with me with this one because I've had to write down notes and I've scribbled it. There's a lot of information to retain. I'm going to try and give you as much of the pertinent detail as possible, but you can look at all the rest and the links in the description box below. Take what I'm saying and then fill in the details yourself. I'm going to give you a rundown, kind of like a brief synopsis, and then my opinion on what happened to her and why and all of that. But by the time we get to the end of this, whether I present this succinctly or not, or you just listen to my hypothesis and then click on the links below to figure it out yourself, I think this one's going to blow your mind because it is pertinent to what's happening in the world today, and it's everything Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria and Tsar Nicholas were telling me in those codes. So, the murder of Countess Teresa Lubienska, I hope I've pronounced that right. If you're Polish, I do apologise. She was murdered in 1957 in the London Underground. I was literally like, I have videos on YouTube that I keep or that drop in my lap that I think, might be a good listen. Sometimes when I'm doing things or like when I'm resting, because like at the moment my hernia site is really, really sore at the moment. So, I'm trying to take it easy. So I like to listen to things, especially to do with, as you know, unsolved murders, unexplained mysteries, that sort of thing. And I had been watching a couple of other things, and obviously the algorithm picked it up and suggested unexplained murders in the London Underground. I've said to you before, and I've posted stuff up on my social media. I want to do an investigation into the London Underground. It had always fascinated me since Most Haunted did it, and I can explain it all. There's like a whole thing now because the London Underground has become so famous for its quote unquote paranormal activity and hauntings that there's like a whole department that's been set up where they're putting up signs all over the place to say, if you experience paranormal activity, report it here, yada blah. And I want to go there when I do my tour, when I get out of here and I get to tour the UK before I go. I'm trying to convince my sister to come with me. I want to do the London Underground and investigate it and explain what's happening, on location, and then use my sprays and clays and all of that to shut it all down and to show the staff that work in the underground what to do when stuff happens. Like that, explain it all to them and put it in a show and all of that. So, this video dropped in my lap of unsolved murders of the London Underground. I'm just going to have a drink of water because this is a big one. If I get cut off, this is big. This is huge. I thought what I'd done on X yesterday and the day before and this morning, and that was the takedown of my career for investigations. But this one is, but it all ties in. So it was talking about the unsolved murder of Countess Teresa Lubienska. Lubienska. I'm apologise if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I'm trying to read my notes. She was a resistance fighter for the Polish Underground Army. She was betrayed by some Polish people in the resistance, and she actually served. She was sent to two concentration camps, Auschwitz and Ravensbrück. and she was sentenced to death. And the only reason why the Nazis didn't execute her is because she was saved by the Swedish Red Cross. Yeah, she was stabbed, and the interesting thing is, her death is considered an assassination. Now, the difference between being called a victim of murder and an assassination is that assassinations are for people of like political or royal, people of political or royal importance. It's an assassination if you're someone that's considered like of social importance, as opposed to a murder, right? And her death is considered an assassination because a lot of people believe that her death was politically motivated. And my God, now she was born into a really respected, powerful Polish family, but Poland at the time when it was Russian, and she went to school in what they called Russia, Poland, in what is now called Ukraine. And you need to listen to all of what I'm saying because this is very important. So far I've mentioned Russia, Poland, and Ukraine, and World War Two, and Nazis. So keep listening. Her husband was stabbed. She married Count Edward Lubienska, and he was stabbed to death, protecting his home from the, during the Bolshevik uprising. Now remember Wilhelm II and Tsar Nicholas. Remember the reason why Tsar Nicholas was killed and who killed Tsar Nicholas? Well, her husband was killed by the same people. Just and her husband was from a very, very, very powerful family, more powerful than hers. But they were very, very well respected, her and her husband. They had a lot of respect from, the Russians and the Poles, because they were all, Russia, Poland, and Ukraine were all one. And her and her husband and son and daughter had a lot of respect. Her son was killed in World War Two, and her husband was killed during the Bolshevik uprising around the same time as Tsar Nicholas. And then, of course, we had the Wilhelm II abdicating from the throne. Remember, he was forced off the throne. Queen Victoria's eldest grandchild. And then we had the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in 1914, who was the rightful heir to the Austria-Hungarian throne. When Wilhelm died in 1918, just before World War One, because remember, with Franz Ferdinand, they said his death is what kicked off the war. Between her husband Edward's death, Wilhelm's abdication from the throne, which ended the German Empire, and Franz Ferdinand's assassination in 1914, and then Wilhelm II's death, Hitler wanted to bring his body back to give it like a hero's funeral, and he refused. He had given orders when he died. He died of a pulmonary embolism. This is important because remember, they were killing royals and nobility during the reign of Queen Victoria, right up until now with Queen Elizabeth, with things like typhoid, and the vaccines and that they were giving them for the typhoid spread the disease, just like COVID and Ebola and the Spanish flu and all of that. Like, this is all tied in, and Wilhelm had given orders for his body to be left where it is. Hitler wasn't allowed to touch it unless Germany restored the monarchy. Now, this is important because I keep saying to the king during my investigation that one of the reasons why Trump and Starmer and the EU, you know, Macron, Moose and Tusk, you know, Poland and all that, one of the reasons why they're targeting Russia and people like Marie Le Pen was because they were talking about restoring the monarchy to France and Germany and Russia and all that, right? There were discussions about bringing the monarchy back into those countries. But between Queen Victoria and World War One and what's happening now and World War Two, that lot, we'll just call them the cult of Odin, the Illuminati, all the current rulers whose grandparents and great grandparents were Nazis and Nazi sympathisers and all that. They worked really hard to abolish all the monarchies. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now, the interesting thing is that Zelensky had two grandfathers who not only knew Ghislaine Maxwell's father, but his grandfather served in the war for the Nazis, fought the British. Now, the pulmonary embolism, remember I said the Queen's father, they euthanized him. He complained of having a sore throat, and then next thing you know, they gave him an injection where his last words were, oh my God, that hurt, or bloody hell, that hurt, or something, and then he was dead. They euthanized him. They euthanized King George so that the Queen would be the Queen. Because remember, she said, for me, it started in World War Two. Their issue with me started in World War Two, and because that's been sitting with me since yesterday and the day before, because of everything that I've been uncovering. So what's it got to do with Teresa? Let me get there. So she moved, after she left Europe, she moved to London, where she continued to work with, she dedicated her life to helping displaced Polish people get new lives for themselves after they were released from the concentration camps, and that, helping them heal from being prisoners of war and that. She was an incredible woman. She apparently was known for being staunchly loyal to her country, which at the time was Poland that was Russia, and apparently she had incredible attention for detail. She remembered everything. She had connections and knew everything that was going on in the underground when it came to resistance fighting and fighting against the Nazis and protecting people against the Nazis and stuff like that. And I'm just trying to read my notes. She, with the Polish resistance fighters, she was with the people who were working on committing industrial sabotage and the assassination of fascist collaborators and stuff. So she was staunchly anti-Nazi, anti-fascism. And she got betrayed by one of her own, and the Nazis came and tried her, and she was sentenced to death, and she went to Auschwitz and Ravensbrück, and then she got saved. And yeah, apparently they tortured her, they did all sorts of horrible things to her to get information out of her, and failed, and it's only because of the Swedish Red Cross that she was saved. And then when she got out, she moved to London and dedicated her life to helping people, Polish people who were victims of the concentration camps, you know, the Polish Jews and that, who were targeted for being Polish, simply because they were Polish. And she was a staunch Catholic as well. Now, what's this got to do with her death? Her murder. She was murdered in 1957. I've had a look at the stuff that was going on in history at the time. And I think I've figured out why she was murdered, and it's to do with everything that's going on today. It'll explain why Russia's involved. It'll explain why Ukraine's involved. It'll explain why Germany's involved in what's going on in the world today because of America. So in 1957, the American government gave Poland a loan of $95 million in exchange for mining equipment, farmland, wheat, and cotton. In exchange for the loan for 95 million, which back in 1957 was worth, I mean, that's like, it would be billions now. In exchange for mining equipment, wheat, cotton, and farmland. So does it sound familiar? Is any of this starting to sound familiar? Also in 1957, Vanguard were testing their TV boosters, doing an altitude test for their TV boosters, and Larry King made his first TV broadcast. This is important because of the whole mind control TV radio broadcasting thing that's happening now, everything I've been saying. Well, they were starting to test all this stuff back in 1957. Also, at the same time, the Cold War, Russia was starting to test nuclear weapons. America needed to join the arms race. And at the same time, the President of the United States wanted to send troops into the Middle East and start a war in the Middle East. And they were testing atomic bombs, they were working on nuclear weapons and all of that, and they needed to try and stop Russia from beating them to the nuclear arms race. Does any of this sound familiar? So what they did was they tried to start World War III in 1957. America and Great Britain and Germany and Poland tried to start World War III in the 50s, but failed. And remember Netanyahu said he was reading a book about bringing down the Roman Empire because they failed the first time. The current Roman Empire is the British royal family, is King Charles. So I believe that Teresa was murdered to shut her up, because not only did she know what was going on, because she worked with all the freedom fighters and worked in the underground resistance and, the Polish resistance, army and all of that sort of thing, but she was an aristocrat, just like Wilhelm, just like Ferdinand, just like Queen Victoria, just like Tsar Nicholas, whose wife was Queen Victoria's daughter, sorry, just like all of them. So they were going around killing off all the aristocrats who were refusing to play along with the Nazis, who knew that these people were so respected and held positions of power where if they got talking to the right people, knowing the information that they knew, they would ruin their plans of creating a third world war. They've been trying to start, America and Europe have been trying to start World War III since the 50s. And the reason why Poland today, I'm telling you now, the reason why Poland are actively trying to take down Russia today is because they owe America billions. They've got to pay back that loan. I guarantee you Donald Trump said to them, you got to pay that money back that we lent you in 1957. And they killed her because of the influence that she had. She was in the concentration camps. I was reading stuff up about it. She knew about the eugenics program. She knew about how they were working on biochemicals, which, Ukraine has 40 biochemical labs. Ukraine is one of the laboratories that you're getting the Hunter virus out of. That, Ebola and all that. It's all coming from Ukraine because nobody's paying attention to Ukraine while it's being bombed. So they tried to start a war with Russia for World War One and World War Two. Germany did with the help of America behind the scenes, and World War Three, so that they can get away with destroying the monarchy and the European and British nobility. I was 100% bang on the money. And they've been trying to do it since the reign of Queen Victoria. Bang on the money. And it's only because that little video about Teresa's murder dropped into my lap, I thought, hang on a minute. And I just spent like an hour just researching everything, writing it all down, and then looking at what was going on when Wilhelm abdicated, and, 1914, and Franz Ferdinand's assassination, how it kicked off World War One, and, all of that. And I thought, and because then her husband was killed during the Bolshevik uprising, and I thought, something's not right here. And then when I started going through it all, because you got to remember all the current world leaders and that at the moment, prime ministers, presidents, chancellors, and that, they're all children and grandchildren and great grandchildren of Nazis. They're all Freemasons. They're all connected to the neo-Nazi movement, including Zelensky. His two grandfathers were in World War Two, and knew Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, who was in on trying to destroy the British monarchy. He was hell-bent for leather when he owned the Mirror on using his newspapers and that to destroy the credibility and reputation of Queen Elizabeth, Prince Charles, especially Prince Edward, because they saw Prince Edward as the weak link. Teresa knew about all the rapes, all the beatings, all the people being executed so that other people could rise up in positions of power. She knew it from not just from the freedom fighter side of it, from the resistance side of it, but she knew it from the aristocratic side of it, and she refused to get involved, just like Queen Elizabeth. And because they refused to get involved and because remember in that post that I put up where Queen Elizabeth said in those codes, you will not call me or my family Nazis. Good men didn't die for the freedom of this country just so that my family could be called Nazis. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically what she said, and now it makes perfect sense. Because the first thing I did, I'm getting goosebumps, was I went to look to see if Teresa knew Queen Elizabeth at the time of her murder. I can't find any connection to her, but I can find connections to people in those circles, because that they even though I couldn't find any evidence that they knew each other or hung out together, she was a countess, so they would have swam in all the same schools of fish, so to speak. So she was murdered because she refused to take the side of the Nazis, and because she was one of the bloodlines whose downfall was imperative in order to be able to destroy British and European aristocracy. Which is why they're healthily they're going after King Charles and Vladimir Putin, because they're from aristocracy. Their bloodlines are connected to the thrones of Russia and Europe and Great Britain. So this dropping in my lap, as well as like obviously the Delphi murders and that, has opened up Pandora's box and exposed the whole things, and holy crap, I was right about everything. With the dream I had, with the Tsar Nicholas codes, the Queen Victoria codes, are all ended up coming full circle, Alpha to Omega. So all the current leaders at the moment are trying to finish what their Nazi ancestors started in World War One and World War Two with World War Three. Blame Russia. Blame Russia for everything. Because Russia, when it was the Soviet Union, they were all of all of Eastern Europe in that at one point. So Russia holds the key to all the aristocracy of like Hungary and Austria and Poland and Ukraine, like all of it. Russia holds the key because they used to be the Soviet Union, which is, remember I said they're trying to wipe out the Slavic bloodlines, and I said they're trying to wipe out they use the pandemics and that to target specific genetics, with the eugenics and that. Teresa knew about the eugenics program because she was in those concentration camps when they were working on them. And they're trying to target anyone who has any kind of like mitochondrial connection to the royal bloodlines of Europe, which is King Charles, because he's Russian. I mean, when they found the bodies of the Tsar Nicholas and his family, and that they got the king's DNA to test for the connection, because mitochondrial DNA is the woman's connection to the females in her bloodline carries on through the daughters. And it was Queen Victoria's daughter, his great grandmother, who was married to Tsar Nicholas. So obviously, when they had their kids in that, Queen Victoria's DNA, her mitochondrial DNA, would have been inside Tsar Nicholas's daughters. And so they used the king's DNA to test when they found the bodies, and they were able to conclude through familial DNA that it was the Tsar Nicholas and his family's bones. And that's what they're trying to wipe out. Anyone connected to the royal households of Europe, but especially Eastern Europe and Germany, and that because the line of succession goes to the next survivor. So if they all get wiped out, they can't risk. See, with what did I say? Franz Ferdinand was next in line to ascend the throne for Austria and Hungary. And you know what they've just done with Hungary? So they needed to make sure that there's nobody to take over. If all the bloodlines of the caliphs of Persia get wiped out and it turns out that I'm the next in line, get rid of me. If they kill off the Slavic bloodlines and it turns out that it's my Fraser of Lovat, Robert the Bruce, that I'm the next in line to take over from the Robert the Bruce bloodline, my family, that's why they wipe us out. Do you see what I mean? They need to make sure that there is no one left standing who can be the rightful heir to any of these thrones, because they want to turn Europe and Great Britain and the Commonwealth into the European Federation. And it's all coming from the orders of America. I've got links in the description box below that talk about how manipulative America have been in Europe and the United Kingdom, going way back. Now remember, the big freeze was in 1963, right? And then they wanted to pull off that Mandela effect with the assassination of JFK. They were starting to work with the Vanguard and all that, was starting to work with the TV airwaves and all of that in the 50s, like they were gearing up to test it all out, so that when they got rid of JFK, who's mentioned in when you look at, important things happening in history in 1957, he's mentioned in a couple of things. There's things in there that you're like, oh my God, it's history repeating itself. And I said this morning that their AI centres and Palantir and pushing for the whole Grok and ChatGPT thing to get inside people's heads, they're either getting ready to try and pull off something, Project Bluebeam, where they're going to try and trick people into thinking that the aliens are here, like for real, and people are going to believe it, or they're going to try and pull off another assassination in full view of everyone, but using the same Mandela effect where people will question if they're seeing what they're seeing. And JFK was the test. but they had to test it out, and that's why they did the big freeze. So Britain and America have been, and Germany especially, have been working together for a long time to destroy the monarchy, and blame Russia for it. They've been after Russia since World War One, because they hold the power. They have the power seat. They hold the power seat. Because you have to remember that King Charles' current bloodline is German. So he's not inherently British. He's from the same European bloodline as like Vladimir Putin and all that. It's just that he holds the throne to Great Britain because of, birth and the death of his grandfather and all of that. He was put into that position through a process of elimination, so to speak. But Queen Elizabeth was never really supposed to be the Queen. It's only because her father died. They were never supposed to be. Princess Diana has more right to the British throne than King Charles. But the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, the Nazis see the British royal family as being the weak link. And because Queen Elizabeth refused to play ball, because her parents refused to play ball and bow down to the Nazis because they stood up to defend Britain, they became targets. And so they've been waiting, typical Fabian, waiting, just slowly, trying to work at taking down the royal family and blaming Russia for it, blaming Russia for everything, because the last two times failed. And because kicking off World War III in 1957 was unsuccessful, they're trying again now. You know how Trump's always going on about, nuclear weapons this and nuclear weapons that. They were trying to cause trouble in the Middle East in 1957. So it's literally history repeating itself. They're trying to finish what their grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and that failed to pull off the last two times. And God's just pulled the veil back and gone, no. And it's because of the martyring of Abby Williams and Libby German and the Delphi murders that I was able to start figuring it out, because they switched my phone off. And then they switched my phone off again, and then that's when I went in for round two and started pulling everything back, and then that's when Musk put me on the naughty step. And now with Teresa's murder, me working on that, it's just blown the whole thing wide open and proven that I was right about everything. Why they're targeting Russia, why they're targeting the king, where it's come from, who's involved. Poland's involved because they owe America whatever 1957's modern day equivalent of $95 million is today, would be billions. And Poland's not a rich country, especially being involved with the EU and that. All the countries that join the EU end up broke. But they crash the economy, because if you look at history, and I've said this before, historically speaking, they always crash the economy and send their countries into a depression just before they start a war. It's done on purpose, because then they make all their money back during the war. Because then they get to charge like $1,000 for like one little tiny screw and nut and bolt, and so they're just trying to finish what their ancestors started in World War One, which is eliminate royal bloodlines across Britain and Europe and blame Russia. Because if everybody hates Russia, then nobody's going to come to their defence when it comes to wiping out the bloodlines and the Federation. Russia, no disrespect to China or anybody else in the world, is the most powerful country in the world. That's why all these other countries are constantly targeting them. because they hold the power. And the reason why they hold the power is because the Lord has promised that when the old world dies, Russia gets the New Jerusalem. Russia is the fatherland to the New World. The Holy Land is going to be given to Russia. And so that woman was murdered because of what she knew and who she knew. Because she would have ruined their plans to kick off World War III in the 1950s. Ta-da! So now all my codes have dropped. So not only have all my codes dropped, and not only am I hoping and praying I can wake the king up before it's too late, because Wilhelm, I 100%, they said pneumonia and pulmonary embolism. I reckon they injected him with something. They gave him a virus, like with Prince Philip. It was his heart that gave out. He had a bad heart, but it was made worse by the fact they gave him the vaccine. So they were eliminating blue bloods who were opposed to the Nazi grand plan. And people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and von der Leyen and what's her name, Merkel, and Angela Merkel, they're all related to Nazis. They were all raised in Nazi households by Nazis, came from Nazi bloodlines, Starmer, Freemasons, like all of it. Starmer, Keir Starmer. It sounds German. So quantum magnetics is awesome. And this whole time, Russia's been innocent. Russia's been innocent this whole time. Simply because they refused to defy their, she was Catholic, so the Catholic or Christian gods, in order to become fascists and Nazis and that, they then became the target for decades, over 100 years of propaganda, disinformation, slander, extortion, blackmail, absolute egregious smear campaigns. With people like Robert Maxwell owning all the newspapers, Donald Trump's friends and that own all the newspapers, and his little tech buddies and that own all the social medias and all that, and they're the ones that are pumping out the anti-Russia, anti-King Charles royal family propaganda to turn people against them, because they use the mind control. The frequencies that they put out, bearing in mind in 1957 Vanguard were testing the TV1 booster altitude test, seeing how far they could beam out the frequencies to affect the Schumann resonance, to get inside people's heads. And then remember in 1963, that's when the Beatles came out, and all the girls just started going nuts for the Beatles, literally going nuts. That's because they infused these frequencies inside the music, beaming them out across the TVs and radio waves to get inside your head. And I've been listening to the Alan Parsons Project as well. And my God, that eye in the sky. I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I'm the, is it ruler of fools? You got a eye in the sky, and when I break down in the middle and lose my head, that one. And that say you don't know me. Da na 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 na. Ooh. all their lyrics are all to do with mind control, how they were going to use AI and robots to mess with your heads, like I, Robot. The song is called I, Robot. And if you listen to the lyrics of Eye in the Sky and Breakdown and what's the name? Even if they, even if you think, even if they say I've got nothing to hide, keep it inside of you. Don't give in. Don't tell them anything. Is it? Don't let it go. Let it go. Don't let it go. No, don't let it show. Oh, they're all about them putting things out into the airwaves to control your mind, and that they're watching everything you're doing because they can get in your head. I'll find the songs and I'll put the links in the description box below, and look at the lyrics and you'll be like, holy crap. And that was the Alan Parsons Project. And that's the reason why they would never have gone mainstream, because they refused to sell their souls. But I love them. They're a huge. My sister Marion bought their music back when she did her big tour of the UK and Europe and that when she was a teenager, and so I grew up with the Alan Parsons Project. So they're a huge inspiration for me, for the Night of the Black Sun, my zombie rock apocalypse music, but also now the Beast of Burden, my rock opera. So yeah, I'll put the links in, but they're talking about everything that I've been saying about the Schumann resonance and how they're using robot AI to get inside your head, and how they've put things up in the sky, the all-seeing eye to keep an eye on you and all that sort of thing. Yeah, Alan Parsons Project were writing about it decades ago. And so it all ties into what I'm talking about with Teresa's murder. So that poor woman was martyred because she refused to sell her soul. She lost everything. Like, she was left destitute. She was beaten, tortured. She was supposed to be executed in those concentration camps, but she knew the truth. And they couldn't have her getting the truth out because they didn't want people to know who was behind what was going on. And I'm telling you now, the reason why Tusk and Poland and that are involved is because they owe America money from 1957 that is going to take them a long time to pay off. They obviously, and they've sold their lands and given them access to mining. So what minerals and metals are in Poland? Because remember, he did the same thing, Trump did the same thing with Ukraine, wanting the metals and minerals. Same with Russia, wanting the metals and minerals. And they're stealing it from the king. They're stealing the metals and minerals from the king. Mining tools. They wanted mining tool and farmland. And because, solar panels, AI centres, they've been, these data centres and that, they've been planning since the 50s. And it's exactly what the Alan Parsons Project were talking about. All of it. And so they're just trying to finish what their ancestors and that started in the early, the Victorian era right up to the 50s and all of that. They literally tried to start World War III in the 50s. You'll see it in the links in the description box below. So there you go. So that's what happened to Teresa and why I think they killed her. And it all tied into Queen Elizabeth and what they're doing to Russia and the British Empire. I literally have not been wrong about anything. I just had to go back in time in order to see the future. So the only thing I got wrong is waking the king up. If I could just wake the king up and he makes the call to dissolve Parliament, it all gets torn down. All their nefarious plans and everything gets scrapped. Because then they're exposed, and then they have to answer in the courts. They'll all get tried in The Hague and that for, because they're committing war crimes, they're committing genocide, chemical warfare, international terrorism, domestic terrorism, all of them, France, Germany, America, Israel, Ukraine, Poland, they're all involved. Britain, if the king just wakes up and makes that one phone call, all that history gets wiped out. And he ends up, along with Vladimir Putin, becoming the saviour of the world. They'll be the saviours. But I'm only the Holy Spirit. I'm not the Father or the Son in the Trinity, and it's the Father and the Son who are the earth-based ones who have the power to do something about it, about what I'm saying. I can only give them the codes and tell them what I see, because I'm up there looking down. I sit above the Schumann resonance. I can't be affected by it because I'm ascended. So I'm not affected by the fear mongering and the propaganda and the fake news and the threats and all of that, because I work for a higher power, so I'm above all of that. But I'm trying to beam it down what I can see from my angle to wake them up, to wake everyone up. Because at the end of the day, even if they got rid of the king and Vladimir Putin and that, we still have the rebellion, we still have the uprising, we still take the bad guys down. But we could do it a lot faster if the king and Vladimir Putin come together to take Starmer down. Just by dissolving Parliament, Donald Trump loses all control, because then what it means is that he can't use any of his military bases to bomb Iran, to bomb Gaza, and to bomb Russia, because he'd be stopped from doing it, and their militaries would be kicked out of Great Britain, because then America's recognised as the enemy. One phone call from King Charles changes the course of history, and he'll be seen as the saviour. But I reckon they got in his head. If they've given him any of their Google stuff, the Meta stuff, any AI stuff, any Grok stuff, any Chat GBT, any of that stuff, Elon Musk's internet, anything like that, they've gotten into his head. They've put him into the position to be responsible for his own downfall, because then they get to keep their hands are clean, you see. Well, the king agreed to it. The king went along with it. The king didn't stop us. The king didn't say no. Quite clever. But they forgot about me, the Holy Spirit bloodline, the navigator to the stars bloodline, the one who can speak the language of the universe, the one who knows physics, that even their top scientists at CERN, their top military secret service minds, their top AI programs don't have access to. I'm the only one. And everything that I've documented and posted over the years, since my blog days right up until now, I've known puts my life at risk, makes me a target, but it just spurred me on. It just spurred me on. I rolled my sleeves up and went, right, okay then, challenge accepted. But now you know why they're targeting one woman. Because that one woman is the most powerful woman on earth. And they weren't expecting me to uncover everything they were expecting, because they thought they'd had it hidden in the past, buried deep down enough that I wouldn't see it. But they forget that Odin's my friend, and Odin is the god that I use to dig stuff up from underground, and she was killed in the underground. I'm not laughing at her, but she died in the London Underground. And Odin is the god I use when I need to dig stuff up from the past. That's why I'm my ex and that I'm always like, dig, Odin, dig. So I feel sorry for the king, because when he wakes up, and I keep praying that he does, even though I yell at him all the time, but I pray every day that he does wake up. But when he does wake up, he's going to have to live with the realization that most of the people that work for him, his government, for the last few decades, since his mother's reign especially, and his grandfather's reign, and all his friends and business partners never had his back. That their plan from the second they came into his life was to destroy him and his family's reign and bloodline, to wipe out the British Empire and European Empire, connection to the European blue bloods. And yeah, Teresa lost everything doing the right thing. And I thought I had to look into it because I know how she feels. I wasn't in a concentration camp, but I mean, I was tortured, I was starved, I was neglected, I was abused. My experience was nowhere near as bad as hers, God willing, but we survived what we survived because of our faith and because God protected us, because like her, I'm trying to do the right thing by everyone as well. And remember, when I first got locked up, I got a message from my boy Thomas, and he told me he was proud of me because he said that I was a modern day, I'm going to get emotional, freedom fighter. He said, Mum, you're a freedom fighter. Because back then, before Chris got into their heads, they knew what I was fighting for, and they were proud of me. They were the ones that said to me, keep fighting, because I said to them, should I just give up and walk away and, look for investors and start again, and we just, and we just move away and start again, just the three of us, and not try and get justice for what Chris and that did? Or should I keep fighting? And they said, keep fighting, don't give up. Gabriel even said to me, even if I have to sue the NHS myself when I turn 18, you got to hold that hospital responsible for what they did to you, Mum. But they knew back then what I was fighting for, because a couple of weeks before Chris did what he did, the boys and I were discussing, because this is when the whole stuff was kicking off in Ukraine as well, and I was publicly defending Russia on my Instagram when they all started coming after me. Just a couple of weeks before Chris did what he did, the boys and I were sitting in my room talking about how can we get to Russia, to Moscow, to be by President Putin, because the three of us knew that we were the bloodline where we walk on sacred ground. So anywhere we walk is protected by God, protected by the gods of the earth and the air and the water. Of fire, we're protected by the gods. And so wherever we are is safe. So that's why I'm trying to wake the king up before I leave, because if I leave before I wake him up, it means that Great Britain's going to fall. It won't be safe. And I'm from British aristocracy. I'm from German and French aristocracy. I'm from Spanish aristocracy. I'm from Viking aristocracy, although I'm not sure what part of Viking land my ancestors came from. I know that we're Vikings. I'm guessing because I'm so tall, probably Danish. But I just know it was my North Viking ancestors who came down through Spain that created my Callahan bloodline. So I'm fighting for my ancestors too. I'm from Persian royalty. I'm from indigenous royalty. So it had to be me, because there's nobody else that can do it. There's nobody else that has the knowledge that I have, that has the authority that I have, that has the access that I have, that can do the physics that I can do. And the thing that I'm so ashamed of is that the Met Office, Met Office, the Met Police, the British police, the legal system, the Supreme Courts, the NHS, the British military, the British Secret Service were all in on it. So even though I was betrayed by friends and family and potential boyfriends and clients and students and all of that, you're talking about like 50 people. The king was betrayed by thousands. Thousands. Hundreds of thousands, actually. When you think about it, you're talking about military, Army, Air Force, Navy, Secret Service, MI5, MI6, Met Police, the whole British police establishment, West Yorkshire Police, South Yorkshire Police, all in on it. They all helped the British governments in this plot to pull off something that their ancestors were trying to do back in the days of Queen Victoria. And I'm going to say this now, and it is going to sound really controversial, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. Yes, Netanyahu and that Ben Gvir, whatever his name is, Gvir, he looks like a troll under the bridge. Yes, they're evil, bad people, but Donald Trump has more power over Russia, over Israel, than what we've been led to believe. Everything keeps going back to America, even though Israel have done some things, and they've done things. I truly believe that if you just remove those two rotten apples, Israel would be a completely different country, and that they would, because all the Jewish people I knew, all the Israeli people I knew, had Palestinian friends and worked with them, and they didn't give a shit. It was always the ones, and because you have to understand the frenzy of these Israeli people, you know how they act like animalistic in their cruelty? It's because it's mind control. Because when they get in your head, it turns you violent. And with Odinists, their whole primary function is to cause as much trouble and violence and fear and rule by violence and fear as possible. And I think that Israel just isn't as guilty, isn't as culpable in all of this as America is. America has a great financial hold over Israel and has done for a long time. America are to blame, personally, I think, for everything. But they've allowed the bad seeds, just like von der Leyen and all that. It's just, you got to understand is that von der Leyen and Keir Starmer and that commit all their acts of evil behind the scenes. They want you to focus on Israel. They need to bring in this whole anti-Semitic thing. But I think that Israel is nowhere near as guilty for a lot of the stuff that's been going on in world history as America is. It's all America. They've had a problem with Europe and Great Britain since the War of Independence. No King's Day and I just think that if you just remove those couple of bad apples from Israel, you'd see a completely different Israel. So I don't know what the population of Israel is, but the larger population of Israel are being made to suffer for the actions of a couple of bad seeds running their country, because of the persuasions of America. You know how I was saying that Europe and Great Britain and that see Trump as Lucifer, and he's doing all their dirty work for them so they can get away with it all with under his leadership, so that they don't have to get their hands dirty. It's the same but reversed with Israel. Donald Trump and the American government for however many decades have been focusing on letting Israel take the blame, because you know how America funds Israel for everything. They're paying them to, like with the serial killers, they're funding them to bear the brunt of the full force of responsibility for everything that's been going on. Blame the Jews, blame the Jews. No, we should be blaming the Americans. Because every time I do these investigations, it always goes back to America. It always goes back to the CIA. The paper trail always goes back to America, never Israel. Whenever I jump in on codes for Israel, it's always just get rid of those couple of people and Israel's going to be beautiful and peaceful, and they join forces with Palestine and they heal together. I'm getting goosebumps. When you've got thousands of Israeli soldiers taking their own lives because of what they've been forced to do, you know that you're not dealing with a nation of evil people. It's just a couple of bad seeds. And if they're held accountable in international courts of law, strung out for all the world to see, and the rest of the world makes sure that whoever takes over Israel once they're removed does right by the people and by their God and by Palestine and, you know, their neighbours and all of that, you'd see a completely different Israel. Israel, the Jews are being targeted again by the Americans, by the British. So it's not that, you know, oh, no, it's no surprise that that person's Jewish, or, you know, that person converted, or look at them at the Wailing Wall. It's all been done by design to set up Jewish people to take the fall for it again. Because there's a bigger story at play here than America wanted you to see. And I truly believe that it's America that holds all the power, not Israel. They've just been funded to do it in order to take the blame, just like with the serial killers. And they're getting help to do it. They're being targeted by the Nazis. Again. But so are the Middle East, because like I said, in 1957, who was the president in 1957? Wasn't Roosevelt, was it? Whoever it was wanting to start a war with the Middle East then as well. History repeating itself. I haven't met a single Jewish person that I didn't like. They were genuinely humbled in the presence of their God, humbled for the love of their God, hardworking, exceptionally hardworking. They know how to make money, they know how to save money, they know their shit, you know, but they carry the sadness with them that's been embedded into like their central nervous system, to always grieve and weep for what happened. And you know how they keep trying to say that no, that didn't really happen and the Jews are lying and the concentration camps weren't that bad. It's all part of the propaganda. They want everyone to blame the Jews. They want everyone to hate the Jews. They want everyone to hate the Arabs. They want everyone to hate black people, Slavs. The oldest, like I said yesterday, the ancient civilizations, the oldest bloodlines. And every time I look at it, it's coming from America. And, you know, the Americans that came from Germany and France and the War of Independence started because Benjamin Franklin went back to America and lied about King George. King George, you know, Mad King George, he was perfectly happy to let America be independent. He just wanted to like create libraries and greenhouses and, you know, and they went after him. You know, they hold the madness of King George and all that. It was all done by design. Benjamin Franklin, who was a member of the Hellfire Club, you know, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, they sacrificed a woman. He went in the caves. He went back to America and told them King George said it's war, and that's not what happened at all. He said if they want their independence, they can have their independence as long as we can continue to trade with them, like fair trade, like with the cotton and all that. And Franklin went back and lied. So all Britain's problems and most of Europe's problems stems from America. And when you've got these presidents who are targeting the king, targeting the British monarchy, even though most of them can be traced back to the same bloodlines and all that, it's out of jealousy and spite, because their country wasn't built by kings. Their country was built by stealing lands from indigenous people. They're foreign invaders. And they've hated the British and European monarchies for that ever since. And Donald Trump is desperately trying to be the King of England, the King of Greenland, the King of Denmark. He thinks that he's the rightful heir to the throne of the European Federation. And so he's throwing Israel under the bus, he's throwing Palestine under the bus, he's throwing Ukraine under the bus, Nigeria, Lebanon, Russia. And then you've got these little, you know, Jacinda Ardern and von der Leyen and Macron and that, yeah, we'll help you because we don't want monarchies. And Marine Le Pen and Vladimir Putin and that are like, well, maybe we should bring back our monarchies. Kill them, start a war, throw them in prison, make sure they lose elections, boo! And now, between yesterday, the day before and today, after I've been working on the Delphi murders and I've posted everything I've posted, you can't unsee what I've just exposed. And I will continue to pray that my king wakes up and makes that phone call. And then everyone can leave Russia alone. In fact, France and Germany and Ukraine and that should be paying Russia for reparation. And Iran. They should be paying reparation for the damages. You can't unsee it now, eh? All because of a couple of unsolved murders I worked on. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the best physicist there is. I'm no Faraday, I'm no Nikola Tesla, but I'm me, and who can do my physics? So I'll put the lyrics to those 3 songs. But if you go to Spotify and look up the Alan Parsons Project, or even YouTube, iRobot, what's the other one? The one that's got the all-seeing eye on it, the Eye of Horus on it. Turn of a Friendly Card, all those ones. Listen to the lyrics, but those 3 songs in particular, I'll put the lyrics up. It's going to make your blood run cold, because they were trying to tell us then what they were planning on doing, getting to you through the music and the TV and all that, but they refused to play ball. So they were never allowed to be rich and famous like all the rest of them that sold their souls. So I'm going to go. Has your mind been blowing? I bet your mind's blowing. Welcome to the day of my life. A day in my life, sorry. Alright, so I'm going to go and have a coffee now, and I'll speak to you later. Poor Teresa. Well, I've given her a voice now. I've helped solve her murder. Poor thing. All the blame that Russia's taken for all these decades as well. Just so that America could get away with secretly trying to rule the world. I'll speak to you later. Ka kite anō.